Okay. So, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, today is full moon, so I think it's appropriate for me to do a Moonlight Sonata practice. So, yeah, let's do that now. Hey, hello, Astolfo Feeds, welcome. So today is it's full moon today. It's full moon in my area, so I think it's appropriate to try and practice Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata because moonlight and all. Thank you. So this is the first movement, and the first movement is actually quite easy. Like it's not too hard to do. So yeah, the first movement is quite slow and is quite easy, but it's actually quite tricky because for beginners, in this part, usually their fingers still can't really separate between the accompaniment and the melody, like in this part. So the melody is using the fifth finger, our little pinky finger, like that, but So yeah, we have to sound like that, but for beginners, it's still hard to separate the pinky and the other fingers, so it's usually sound like this to beginners. Like that, usually it sounds like this. So it's like that. Usually beginners do that mistake because they're still not able to control each of their fingers' power. Yeah, so the proper way to play it is like that, with only the pinky finger being more prominent. Again, here it's the same thing. Melody in the pinky finger, and yeah, as usual, starting players would play it like this. Like that usually. But yeah, the right way to play it is with the pinky finger accenting the melody only. Confession, I still can't memorize the whole sonata, the first movement. I still forgot some parts. So yeah, I'm doing a side read every time, but strangely I've actually memorized the second and the third movement of this sonata. Oh, hello, Dafa. Welcome to the stream. Welcome. I am doing Moonlight Sonata because it's full moon today. And now in this part, so the coda part, the ending part, the melody moved to the left hand, so it's also quite tricky to do. So yeah, that's the first movement. It looks easy. It's easy to learn, but to play it nicely, it's hard because these melodies are long lines. They're very slow and they're very simple. The melodies are simple. Like if we just play the melody all sounds like this. Yeah, that's the melody. Fun fact. Fun fact. This sonata is actually it was written that so the original score was written. Beethoven wrote that the pianist should hold the sustain pedal throughout the piece, but that was like that was 200 years ago, 200, 300 years ago, where the sustain pedal of a piano doesn't hold notes this long. So usually the older piano, the piano from Beethoven's era, it's like probably just that long, the sustain. But nowadays the piano it has a very long sustain. So if we were to play as Beethoven wrote back then, and hold the sustain pedal throughout the piece, it would sound muddy like this. Like that, it will sound muddy. It would start to sound muffled and everything because the sustain is just too long nowadays. If we take it slower though, might be possible. Let's see. Yeah, it's possible, but it's not very good because the bass starts to build up and it starts to muffle, starts to like yeah, a lot of bass notes would start to just build up, and that's not good. So yeah. So yeah, it's best to use the pedals sparingly for this piece now, instead of as written pedal throughout the whole pieces. But okay, so this sonata is actually a like some kind of a breakthrough by Beethoven. So usually are sonatas usually go from have they have three movements, but the first movement would usually be a fast movement, and it's usually the most important of the sonata. But in Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, the fast movement is actually in the third movement. So the first and the second movement is slow, and the most important movement of the sonata is the third movement. And another thing, the second movement is the tempo marking is allegretto, which is quite fast, but it's actually in practice a slow movement. So yeah, that's the second movement, and it's marked allegretto, which is quite fast, but in practice it's not. It doesn't sound fast. So yeah, so we could sum it up as a slow movement as well. So usually sonatas are fast move. The three movements of a sonata are usually the first movement is a fast movement, second would be a slow movement, and the third movement would be a faster movement, faster than the first. And also, these sonata, the Moonlight Sonata, is titled Sonata Quasi una Fantasia, which means it's a sonata, but it is like a fantasia. It's also quite a breakthrough for Beethoven. And another fun fact, Moonlight Sonata, the title Moonlight is not actually given by Beethoven himself. In fact, I think it was, if I remember correctly, Moonlight. The title Moonlight was given after Beethoven's death by the publisher. I'm not sure about whether it is throughout Beethoven's life or whether it's posthumous, but yeah, the publisher gave the title Moonlight because the publisher thought that it felt like he was looking at the moonlight on a river in Germany, so he gave the title Moonlight. Hey Razor, welcome to the stream. Okay, and usually Beethoven doesn't give a specific title to his his pieces like Moonlight, Pastoral. Usually, if Beethoven gives special title like Pastoral and Pathetic, it's usually Beethoven himself. Like it's a quite important piece by Beethoven, but a lot of Beethoven's titles aren't actually made by Beethoven. And even the Pathetic Sonata, this one, yeah, the Pathetic Grande Sonata Pathetic is not actually Beethoven's original title, but his friend, Beethoven's friend, suggested the title, the Grande Sonata Pathetic, to Beethoven, and apparently Beethoven loved the title so much he made it official. So yeah, when listening to the piece, his friend, I think it was his friend felt a great feeling of patheticness in the piece, so we gave him that. That also that piece is the pathetic sonata. Now back to the Moonlight Sonata. Okay, let's do the second movement. So that's the second movement of the Moonlight Sonata, and it's actually shorter than the first, but I think it's harder than the first. Because of the middle part here, where the pianists have to kind of switch between the legato and the staccato. And it's quite tricky for beginners because of the finger control. So the left hand is staccato, and then the right hand switches between legato and staccato, and it's quite tricky when you're just starting out. So yeah, that part is quite tricky for beginners. But the other parts are actually not very hard. And once again, the hard part is to refine it, the way you play it, to refine the performance. That's the most difficult part of these slow movements. Like the first and the second part. The First part is the melody, to separate the melody and the accompaniment. The second part is to make sure the melody stands out and not muddled up by the pedaling and stuff. The third movement, however, is one of the most popular as well as the first movement. It's the fast part, and I'm sure many of you have heard of this part. And this one is more straightforward. The technical difficulties are more straightforward. It's like you can already hear what's making it difficult. You can already see. Unlike the first one and the second one, like the first one, it's more subtle, the difficulties, like making sure the melody stands out and making sure the melody makes sense and making sure the melody doesn't muddle up with the accompaniment. So yeah, the third movement, you can already see what's making it quite hard to learn. It's fast beat, fast beats, broken arpeggios. Jumps. And the left part. So the left part is quite simple, but you have to make it quite rhythmic. So jumpy like that. And the tricky part, even the first page is quite tricky. Other than the fast ascending broken chords, this part is also tricky. This one, it's tricky. It's hard to do right. So what we want is, we play this twice, right? And most of the time, if we're not careful, we end up modeling the second one. Like it doesn't really sound. You cannot really hear it. It's like that. But you have to make sure the second also sound. You have to make sure the second one is heard. So the first one is actually forzando, so you have to make sure it's loud. But the tricky part is because it's very loud, the second one usually is covered by the first one. Like that. Now this part is also quite tricky. So your hand bounces up and down like this. While you do this tremolo-like thing, at the same time, your lower fingers should play the melody. Make sure it sounds prominent, like that. And the left part also plays the harmony. So it follows the right hand's melody. Like that. And the tricky part is you have to do it fast. And the pinky here, you have to make sure it sounds and it's sustained as long as you need. So this G here is acting as a pedal note, so you have to make sure it's sustained and it's heard. So this is bringing everything down, like it's making sure it's rooted to this G, to this G major chord. So this G sharp here is a sforzando and with a fermata, so you hold it as long as you want. So continuing that part is another flurry of arpeggios, a variation of the intro. This part is getting trickier because the position it's a B flat diminished chord, so you can't really do like that. It's quite tricky to do this. If you do the same motion as this C sharp minor arpeggio, it's going to cost you because it takes too much movement from this part to here. It's too far from a G to a C sharp, so you have to. Our textbook does indicate that you use a second finger, your pointy finger, to do this part like that. But this also poses a problem when reaching the end of the arpeggio. So because the end of this is an octave in C, in E, and by using the second finger like this means your hands aren't really prepared for this E octave, because you've just moved like this and you have to do this quickly. and your thumb have to press the E here repeatedly, and it's not really prepared to do that if you are not practicing enough. Like that. Another tricky thing is on the left part. So it's a B flat and then jumps to repeated note of B flat and C sharp. But then you have to jump to B flat octave. Like that. Then the next part is also quite tricky, but it's quite doable because it's all in black notes. It's an E flat 7th arpeggio, but the third is omitted, so the G is omitted, so it's all in black. So the wise thing to do is to kind of spread out your fingers. So don't make it like round like this, because if you use the tip of your finger to do these black notes, it's quite difficult because it's got a smaller surface area for the black notes to hit. So it's best to kind of spread out your fingers and use the bottom pad of your fingers. Kinda like that. Like that. Because if you use the tip of your finger like that, you have to aim it every time. And it's quite tricky to do. Now comes the main theme. In this part, the tricky part is the left hand. It's a very fast Alberti bass. Now here comes another tricky part on the right hand. So Beethoven wrote an octave here. So a B flat octave, but with a trill on the top. So like that, but with octave. So you have to use your either your fourth finger or your third finger to play the trill, and that's quite tricky. Now the trill part in this second one is even harder and even trickier because it's in the G. And the trill rises half step, a half note here. And if you can't use your fourth finger or even your third finger because it's in the white note. If it's in the black notes, it's easier to use your fourth or third finger to do the octaves. But here you have to use your fourth because you have to rise to a G sharp from G. So yeah, either you use if you can use a fourth finger, then go for it, but it's quite weak here because you have to do a trill, and trill with this, a trill with a fourth and fifth finger is quite weak. Not that the three and fourth finger trill is also strong, no, it's quite weak as well, but it's quite more manageable, especially when doing this, because you have to do the trill and then do a slide up like this. And a 3, 4, 5 configuration is actually very weak for this, so it's much more manageable if you use a fifth finger for the first octave, and then you just rise using the 3 and 4 trills, then you go for the 2, 3, 4 configuration, which is more which is stronger and more manageable, like that. Comes this part. The first part is quite straightforward. But the left hand is, again, the Alberti bass is quite tricky. Now the second part is quite more tricky because the rhythm is quite different. And that part is, the fingering is quite tricky as well. Then comes this part. This part is actually not that hard. Just make sure to practice your jumps. And I think, in my opinion, it's, so these are jumps, right? You can accent the bass notes to make it sound more exciting and more grounded, and make the beat and the rhythm stand out. Like that. So yeah, make the bass notes more prominent. Because if your bass notes are not heard, if they're weak here, like that, if you make it like that, a weak bass note, it's not exciting, and the the movement isn't there. Like, it may be written piano, like P, not forte, but if you don't accent the bass note, it won't sound good. Okay, this part is quite tricky as well. So this is the repetition for the first part. Basically, you have to jump. Now we're back to this part again. But we have repeated this part, so now moves to the development section, the development here. So from the first part for the repetition, we go to the C sharp minor. But now we go to a C sharp major. Now comes the what I think the hardest part of the whole sonata. It's where the right hand and left hand switches. So you play the melody with the left hand, and the right hand plays the Alberti bass. And Alberti bass is actually quite difficult to play on the right hand. It's quite tricky. So yeah, that's tricky, and even with the rhythm is making it more difficult. That part, that melody, it's difficult to do. So you have to take this slowly. And I missed a part. Like that. And then we try to speed up. this is the end of the development part. So yeah, a sonata usually is split up. A sonata movement is usually split up to an exposition. That's the intro, where you introduce the main theme. In this case, is this theme. That theme, and then the development part, where you kind of do variations on the theme. So if you remember, it's this part, and with the left hand melody, that part. And then next, after the development part, the development section, it's the recapitulation. So as the name suggests, it recaps the exposition, the main theme. So it goes back to the main key. But there's something different about the recapitulation. It's not an exact copy of the exposition, it's another variation. Hence why we don't do this again after that melody here. But we skip to this part, as with Beethoven written. It's not always the same how composers write their recap, but Beethoven skips the arpeggiated part here, so we go to the main theme again. Again, we accent the bass part. Now is the coda. Wait, this is not actually the coda. This is just the this is the transition to the cadenza. So this one is also tricky. So the right hand is an octave, but it keeps on jumping and switching between sustained legato and staccato, and the left hand plays a repeated note, so it plays quite fast. And after that, the left hand has to jump to this chord. This is an open F sharp chord, but it's made sure it's actually a F sharp minor by the right hand. So yeah, that's a chromatic. It's a chromatic scale, but if you see, usually we are taught to use only the thumb, the pointer finger, and the middle finger for the chromatic scales. Usually like that. So yeah, but I'm not only using these three fingers. I'm also using the fourth finger for this, like this, instead of doing this. This is because playing it like this makes sure you have a more legato playing in the chromatic scale. And it's also what Beethoven wrote on the fingering. Instead of like this, a more detached performance, it can sound more legato with this fingering. And then we go to the ending, the coda. And this part is also hard because you play a broken chord arpeggiated, but in both hands. That's basically the Moonlight Sonata. It's quite hard, but it's not extremely hard. But for beginners, it would be quite hard. It would take quite a while to learn. So yeah, basically like that. Wait, let me stream information. Let me check something first. Okay, I am changing the title. Wait, Oh yeah, let me change the title a bit right now. Okay, done. Hi Greenies, welcome to the stream. So this is the as I said, this is the it's the development section. It's usually in the relative major of the first exposition chord. So in the if the exposition is in the minor key, the development is usually in a major key. So our exposition is in C sharp minor. But then we move to a major key. So basically, in this development part, it's up to the composer to do whatever he wants with the melody in the exposition part. Oh, hello, really? Welcome to the stream. So yeah, as what Beethoven has decided, we should play the melody in the left hand. now to the recap. Hi, Sylvia. Welcome to the stream. So this is the closing part of the sonata again. The third movement is actually quite taxing. It takes quite a stamina. So yeah, it's no wonder if you after you've played it, you might feel a bit tired if you're still not very advanced. Even I have a little bit of fatigue here, and I should practice that. I should train that so I don't have a fatigue after playing it. And this is actually the first sonata that I've played the whole movement. Like, I learned the whole movement. The only sonata I finished. So did you know this sonata is actually a love letter to Beethoven's student at that time? So Beethoven fell in love with his student named Giulietta Giugiardi. Giulietta Giugiardi. That was the name of the student, and Beethoven fell in love. And strangely, the love letter that he made sounds gloomy, especially the third movement. Yes, that's a love letter there. Very love letter like. The only part that sounds really like a love letter is the second movement, because it sounds much happier. So that's basically Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata in 3 movements. Hello, Jezebel. Oh, hello, Elise. Welcome. Yeah, but Beethoven ended up being left by Giulietta, so this love letter definitely doesn't work. Giulietta decided to go with another man and left Beethoven in his hometown. Such a it's such a sad love letter. Poor Beethoven. So yeah, this as I have explained, this sonata is a very experimental and quite new. It's very experimental in the in even in Beethoven's era, like. But even Beethoven's first sonata is quite different, quite a breakthrough. Usually, sonatas are 2 movements, but Beethoven's first sonata is actually in 4 movements. I mean, yeah, usually sonatas are 3 movements, a fast, slow, fast piece. But yeah, the first sonata is a 4 movement sonata, and then there's this one, the slow, slow, fast sonata. Okay, let me play it again for you. The first movement. I'll retell the story after I finish this movement. So that's the first movement of the Moonlight Sonata. It's one of the most popular sonatas by Beethoven. Almost everyone must have heard it at some point of their life. So, what's the story behind this sonata? So, you know the title, Moonlight Sonata. So earlier this in the stream, I have actually quite told the story, but I'm gonna tell it again. The story. So Moonlight Sonata, Moonlight. The title Moonlight isn't actually made by Beethoven, as with many of Beethoven's works. So Beethoven doesn't really give special titles to his work, like Moonlight, Pastoral, Pathetic. He doesn't really give titles like that. The Moonlight title actually came from his publisher, the publisher of this work. So when the publisher heard of this work, he said that when he listened to the Moonlight Sonata, to this sonata, which is Beethoven's 14th sonata, he felt like he was watching the moon in the river in Germany. I forgot what river it was, but it was a river in Germany. So he gave the title Moonlight Sonata, and I think it was given after Beethoven's death. So Beethoven doesn't. If we were to meet Beethoven, if we tell him play Moonlight Sonata, he won't know what Moonlight Sonata is, because the title Moonlight Sonata is actually titled given after his death, like many other of Beethoven's works. Some of Beethoven's actual titled works includes the Pastoral Symphony. So for Pastoral Symphony, Beethoven actually gave the title himself. But for Pastoral Sonata, which is the 15th sonata right after this one, I think he didn't give the title. I'm not sure, but yeah, I think he didn't give the title himself. And also the eighth sonata, which is the Pathetic Sonata, if you've ever heard of this one. So yeah, that is widely known as Pathetic Sonata. That one is actually titled. The title was given by Beethoven's friend. When Beethoven's friend heard of the sonata, he thought of a great pathetic feeling, and he said to Beethoven, "Hey, why don't you title this the Pathetic Sonata?" And Beethoven apparently liked it so much that he made the title official, and it's in the end it's called Grande Sonata Pathetic, which is Grand Pathetic Sonata. And then back to the Moonlight Sonata. So this is the actual title of the sonata is actually Sonata Quasi una Fantasia, which means in English, that's in Italian. In English, it means sonata, but it's like a fantasia. Sonata quasi means like, quasi is like, una fantasia, which means a fantasy. So yeah, sonata, but it's like fantasy. So fantasy or fantasia is actually a form of music as well in the classical era. It's quite popular back then. Okay, so what's the story behind this Moonlight Sonata? It's actually a love letter for his student. So Beethoven thought many students in his life, and a few of them are pretty girls. So a lot of them are pretty girls, and one of them is an Italian named Giulietta Gucciardi, which is an Italian, a girl he fell in love with, and he made the sonata for her. But the weird thing is, this love letter sounds very gloomy, as you've heard and known, especially the third movement. This is an actual love letter that sounds like this. Yep, that's a love letter. And the tragic melody isn't actually it's actually kind of foreshadowing what will happen to Beethoven and Giulietta, because while Giulietta at first fell in love with Beethoven as well, but she decided to leave Beethoven and go for another man. I think Giulietta went for a prince. I'm not sure. But yeah, Giulietta decided to leave and go with another man. And that's gonna be the pattern of Beethoven's love life till the end of his life. So yeah, Beethoven never really got a successful life, even though he never really got a successful love life, even though he married and have children. So yeah, this uh, this sonata sounds gloomy, and it's a love letter, and it's not because there's something sad about this sonata, but what happens after does is actually sad. So yeah, weird, but that's what happens. And I think Beethoven have two or three kids. I forgot. Not really. Many music are made in happy moments, or some are just made because the composer thought of a good idea. And also, many music is actually religious, like Ave Maria. It's religious, all right. And yeah, this sonata is not, it's not made from tragic moments. It's actually a love letter. It's just what happens after is tragic. But yeah, it's a weird sounding love letter. I'm not sure, but it sounds sad. But there are quite a happy music, like the dreams of love. Like that. That's a happy music. And then Mozart created a lot of mischievous music. Yes, yes. It's just the way artists go, and yeah, whatever emotion they have, they just put it in the paper. But actually, the classical era, the musics are actually not all of them. Like many of them aren't actually the composer's emotions. Like they're not actually what the composers had in mind. It's more like in the classical era, it's a bit like artists now. So in the classical era, rich people like rich people, royalties, kings, princes, basically the royal families and the like the higher ups, they commission composers. Yeah, they commission composers to make pieces for them, to make music, because at that time they need like entertainment. So yeah, they have their own hall and they ask these composers to make music for them to be played when they're bored. So yeah, yeah, that's actually what happened back in the classical era. The classical era, the Baroque era, that's what actually happened. So these commissions actually, well, there are less commissions by the Romantic era. So in the Romantic era, more composers write for themselves instead of being commissioned by other people. But there are still commissions back in the Romantic era. But the Romantic era and the Impressionist era and the 20th century, there are more like individualistic compositions. Like they're more expressive. They're more of what the composers had in mind. So yeah, when people say like every music has some kind of hidden meaning inside, actually no, not all, especially during the classical era where the music are actually just pure music. Just a few of them are actually like there are hidden meaning inside, like the Moonlight Sonata here being a yes, like the Moonlight Sonata here being a love letter. But especially Mozart actually like hide meanings inside of the his music. Not sure how much it costs, but usually these rich people, these royalties would like they would bring in the composer to live in their house. So they live together, sometimes in the castle or just some mansion. So these composers just live with the commissioner, but not all. Sometimes they live in their own house. But for like Haydn, Mozart, Beethoven, there are eras where they live with the commissioners. Especially Haydn. Haydn lived like 10, 20 years. I'm not sure how long, but quite a while. He lived with the commissioner, but Haydn lived like he was alone when he worked for the royalty, which made him really, really lonely. So to kind of entertain himself, Haydn wrote a lot of mischievous music. Like he loves his jokes, yeah, like his musical jokes. Like if you've ever heard of this, if you've ever heard of that, the which is titled the Surprise Symphony, because of this, the one part where it surprises everyone, like the listeners, with a very loud chord after a very silent music, like that. You should try. Yeah. So basically, Hayden is the like the founder of musical shitpost. Like that. That's the Surprise Symphony. He literally joked about it. He went to surprise the listeners, and he also made a fart joke music, and also he kind of made a fun symphony where so this symphony this symphony goes like okay, so the music plays and then suddenly they stopped, and the violinist have to kind of play a oh hello Mr. Baron. So the violinists have to play out of tune in the middle and then stop to kind of tune the violin, but it's written in the score, like, so yeah, musical memes by Haydn. Well, I forgot what the title is. Let me check. Oh yeah, it's called Il Distrato, which is means distraught symphony. So it's a symphony Il Distrato, a distraught symphony. It's basically this distraught title, basically based on this part, the last movement, I think, where the violinist and the I think it's the violinist. They have to kind of tune in the middle of the piece, like something sounds dissonant all of a sudden, and it's all written, but it sounds like a joke. Yeah, so Haydn, the head jokester of the classical era, and then there comes Mozart, another jokester, mischievous composer. Mozart loves his fart and poop jokes. Also, there's a like Mozart deliberately made a piece sound bad. Like, uh, this piece is like what you should never do in your composition. He made it specifically like that. So yeah, Mozart, Haydn, both of them are very childish. And yeah, fart jokes. Mozart and Haydn loves their fart jokes and poop jokes. Mozart is actually a scatologist. He loves his poop. He has fascination over human feces actually, which is quite bad. And a historical, I think, historical account says that Mozart loves to jump between tables and do backflips like a cat and meows. Yeah, Mozart loved to do that. Mozart is quite funny in the brain. It's not his brain is not quite right actually, but he produces the purest music. Like it's like a 180 degrees, like between ends and ends, white, black and white. It's crazy. Mozart is one crazy guy. Yeah, so yeah, Mozart and Haydn both are shit posters. And also, Haydn created a symphony called Toy Symphony. It's basically a symphony that sounds like a bunch of toys being played, like cuckoo sounds, train. I think it's train. I'm not sure, and some like kids flutes and everything. So yeah, these two composers are quite funny. And if you listen to Hayden's music, you can kind of hear like how fun, how childish he is with his jokes. Like his music sounds so happy and like bouncy on his feet, quick on his feet. Like this sonata, for example. So yeah, that's Hayden's music is almost all of them are like that. Very light feet, very light-hearted, happy-go-lucky. Yeah, if you want happy music, you listen to Haydn. Mozart's music, though, although he has a lot of shitpost music memes in his music, yeah. Although he have lots of memes in his music, jokes in his music, but when he gets serious, his music is very simple but very classy, very deep. So Mozart, as with most musicians, would say that Mozart Mozart is actually the hardest to play, even though Mozart doesn't make music that have a lot of notes in it. Like Mozart's music is very simple, but that simplistic music made it hard because there's so little to play. Yeah. Oh yeah. Hayden is Hayden is the like the dad of dad jokes, the dad of musical dad jokes. And Hayden lived quite old as well, like maybe 70, 80 years old. And even at his 70th, like at the age of around 70, Hayden still makes musical jokes. And his jokes never changed. Still the same happy go lucky, light-hearted jokes. So yeah, the dad of musical jokes. And Mozart is the king of procrastination. Mozart loves to procrastinate, and it's due to kind of his happy-go-lucky nature, but also due to his genius that he is able to like make music in a day. Yes. But yeah, Mozart is able to make music in a day. That's why he procrastinates a lot. And if you never heard of it, I'm sure it has like the meme has circulated and went through your maybe your timeline. But was it the overture of Don Giovanni? I think so. Mozart composed the opening for Don Giovanni. I think it's the morning of the premiere. So yeah, that day he was supposed to like perform this new opera with the orchestra, but he hasn't made the intro for that opera. So he wrote it that morning because last night he was drunk. He was partying. So he woke up, wrote the opening, and this just go on with it. It's crazy. It's the craziest procrastinator ever. And Mozart Mozart died quite young at 32. I think 32 years old. Yeah, I think he died at, in 32 years old. It's because of his drinking habits. He loves to party. He loves to drink, and he was poor because of his gambling and drinking habits. So yeah, late in his life, he lived quite miserable. He drank a lot, and then he developed a liver problem. So yeah, he died of liver problem. I'm not sure. I think it's cirrhosis. He died of cirrhosis. I think a like liver. How to say this? So his livers uh developed some kind of hemorrhages, and yeah, it's because of he drank too much throughout his life, even though he is very young. He's one of the few composers that die young but created a lot of work. It's crazy how many works he created in such a short time. But yeah, then Haydn, Mozart, then Beethoven. Beethoven's life is miserable as hell. So yeah, Beethoven's early life is very actually happy, very happy, because his grandfather loves him and teaches him music a lot. But then at the age of, I'm not sure, I think at the age of 7, his grandfather died, and his life just went south because his Beethoven's father is a drunkard, so he gambles a lot, he drinks a lot, and then um Beethoven's father just decided that Beethoven will be the head, the one who finds money for the who earns money for the family, and each so after Beethoven's father like recognized Beethoven's music talent, they decide to work Beethoven out and have him teach, uh, have Beethoven teach many students, and then when Beethoven get paid, he would just take his money, go drink, go buy some drink. Yeah. And the worst part is Beethoven has, I think, has uh two more siblings, two more younger brother. And then not long after that, I think, I'm not sure how at what age Beethoven's mother died because of sickness. So yeah, Beethoven's life just gone south after that, and especially made worse with his love life. So each time Beethoven fell in love, the girl he fell in love with just decided to leave. But in the end, Beethoven does get married, but the marriage doesn't last long. So in the middle of his life, Beethoven got divorced, and I think his only son. I'm not sure how many. If I remember, Beethoven has only one son, and the uh, his ex-wife took care, like took the responsibility, the right to take care of his son. So even though Beethoven wanted to take care of his son, so yeah, his ex-wife took his son away, but Beethoven still tried to take back the rights for his son from his ex-wife. I think in the end, Beethoven did take the rights to take care of his son, but his son, because of Beethoven's like bad personality, like Beethoven is a very very like emotional because of his hearing. So Beethoven in the middle of in early of his life started to have like some kind of ear infection, I think, and uh it's like tinnitus. Tinnitus, I think. So Beethoven started have to have ringing in his ears early in his life, and it made him quite emotional. He gets angry very easily, and uh, that's that's basically making his emotions unstable. So later, after he started to lose his hearing a bit more, he became very very emotional, and then that made his relationship with his son quite bad. And his son started drinking, started gambling, and then um, his son suddenly lost a gamble and decided to do a suicide. But fortunately, uh, he didn't die. So his son didn't die because of the suicide. So his son points a gun at his head, but the gun misses, fortunately. But after that, his son, I think, changed a bit to become better. But it's too late for Beethoven because Beethoven I think, has already lost his hearing at the end of his life. So yeah, it's quite miserable. So Beethoven created a lot of work, interesting work, but the more interesting part is when he was deaf. Like, how can someone make up make a music, a huge music, when he's deaf? Especially in symphony, how can he hear? But I think after many years of music making, I think He just have it in his head, but Beethoven actually tried to like he have some kind of device that can make him like feel the frequency of the piano, so he can tell what note it's playing to be able to write songs and music. That movement in the Moonlight Sonata that actually sounds like a love letter. So yeah, at least there's something that could be used as a sweet love letter, but the other movements are just chaotic, too chaotic for a love letter. And fun fact: Beethoven actually gave way to like he's the one who transitioned from classical era to romantic era. So romantic era is actually the era where there are more like descriptive music. So music that are used to describe a feeling or a story or a scene or anything else. But yeah, it's a newer kind of music. It's more or less the music we know now. So it gave way to something like this piece. I'm sure you've heard of that piece, the Nocturne by Chopin. Yeah, Chopin is a romantic composer, and Chopin's role model is actually Mozart. So Chopin loves Mozart a lot, and we can it's like we can listen to Chopin's music and you can tell that Chopin's melodies are quite simple but very tricky to play as well, like Mozart. Oh, look at the time, it's 12. So I think I think that's all for today. Thank you so much for those who are coming. Hope those who came to my stream and listened to my story, watched me practice. So thank you so much. I'll be streaming again maybe later. I'm not sure when, but yeah, thank you so much for coming and maybe look forward to another story of the music eras. I hope I can like make it more entertaining next time, but yeah, be back for more stories. Thank you so much for coming and I'll see you soon.